Good morning and welcome to the 130th meeting of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. This meeting is being televised. Today, pursuant to Standing Order 111, we are studying the certificate of nomination of the Right Honourable David Johnson to the position of Debates Commissioner. We are pleased to have Mr. Johnson with us this morning. As in the past, I would like to remind members that the committee is only empowered to examine Mr. Johnson's qualifications and competence to perform the duties of the office he is being appointed to. So please be mindful of this in your questioning today's witness so as not to stray into matters beyond the scope of the inquiry. As also for members, Minister Gould is available to appear on Thursday, November 22nd to provide the committee with a briefing on the Independent Debates Commission. I will therefore go ahead and schedule that appearance. Thank you for making yourself available today, Mr. Johnson. I think last time we were together, we were skating with Daniel Alfredsson in Sweden, which was great fun.
Wasn't it nice to have Danny holding us up?
Yeah. So we look forward to your presence here and welcome for your opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure and honor to appear before this committee. Je remercie les membres du comité de m'avoir.
I thank the members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to discuss a very important issue, the way in which federal leaders' debates are organized in Canada.
Around the table for their in-depth study of such an important part of Canadian democracy. I've read the report tabled by this committee with great attention. Merci pour votre excellent travail.
Thank you for your great work.
The health of Canadian democracy is a lifelong commitment and passion of mine. It's for this reason that I intend on donating to charity any compensation associated with the functions of Debates Commissioner. Je considère cette entité comme un pas dans la bonne direction dans nos efforts continus.
I see this entity as a step in the right direction in our ongoing efforts to safeguard Canada's democratic institutions.
With political parties, stakeholders, and media organizations to deliver Canadians the debates they deserve. Having myself moderated federal leaders' debates in 1979 and 1984, and Ontario provincial debates in 1987, I recognize the essential role they play in exposing Canadians to a diversity of political views, including positions that do not always align with their own. On a personal level, I have always been one to appreciate the political process and the role the media play in a healthy democracy. As Commissioner, my priority would be to establish an open and transparent dialogue with Canadians, political parties, media, and stakeholders. I firmly believe that the success of the 2019 debates will rest on the ability of the Commission to keep the public interest paramount while remaining independent and nonpartisan. Members, I look forward to hearing your views on what makes a debate informative and useful for Canadians. I also welcome your thoughts on the composition of an advisory board that reflects a varied repertoire of skills and expertise. Enfin, j'aimerais avoir votre avis sur les personnes à consulter. A healthy democracy is one that is stable, transparent, and oriented towards the public interest. These are the values that should guide the organization of leaders' debates and the ones I intend to carry along this process. I look forward to working with all of you with a view to report back to Parliament in 2020 with recommendations based on the 2019 experience that will benefit and inform the future leaders of debates in Canada. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair.
From the Liberals. And also I had a suggestion from the opposition that we meet, if there's bells, that we meet up because we're so close, up to 5 minutes before the vote. Is there agreement by the committee to do that? So agreed? Okay, great. We'll start the questioning with Madame Lapointe.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming today, Your Excellency. I am very glad that you are here today with us. What pushed you to come back to public life? This is a very important position. What incited you to apply for this job? I spent most of my life
Dans la vie publique,
in public life, in institutions such as universities. I've also been a member of certain commissions and working groups on politics. I have moderated 3 leaders' debates in the past.
The debates are essential to our democracy, and we must continually work to reinforce our public institutions. Therefore, we asked the question, and I said, yes, it is in the public interest. Thank you. You say that in previous years, in your comments, you said that you had participated in debates as an organizer. What do you think has changed since then compared to now? First, social media is one major change. It is such a revolution. We have a large range of interests to consider. And the challenges is to engage young people in the political democratic process and to see the debates not just in terms of their traditional purpose, but to use new methods to reach all Canadians. That's very interesting. It really is the digital revolution. Your goal in the debates is to ensure that you reach the greatest number of Canadians, no matter what medium they use. That is correct. Also, to develop a large or greater discourse around the options. And the reflection process should be considered not just a reaction to the way things are. You referred earlier in your initial comments to the fact that, yes, there are issues that Canadians are aware of, but if I understand, what you're going to do is try to expand all the debates beyond the 2 or 3 issues that Canadians typically look at during these debates. Simply put, the goal is to organize 2 debates in 2 official languages. I hope that the material to be debated, but also the interest in the major issues that are part of our democratic process will be considered, and to work very hard to expand this interest, as well as the quality of the attention and the exchanges. That's very interesting. I appreciate the fact that you're going to expand the debate, because often people don't understand that perhaps there's 20 commitments made during an election and that this has an influence on what can be decided after the election. I am pleased, therefore, for you to say that. Your previous experience as Governor General, do you think that this will help you to take on this new mandate? I believe so. First of all, it is a great privilege for my wife and I to have served 7 years in the office of the Governor General. Perhaps the most important thing is to see our country in a very clear light. We greatly appreciated that opportunity to meet with a great many number of Canadians in their own communities, as well as to speak with mayors of municipalities volunteer groups, as well as with other individuals who are dedicated and work in the public interest. And the vision of this great country that is Canada. And we can make this a better country. How much time do I have left, Chair?
Une question.
A very down-to-earth question. Where will you exercise this role of Commissioner? We have a small office in the neighboring area of Parliament. It's on Spark Street. It's Spark Street, isn't it? Yes, it is. I haven't seen the office yet. It's small, but I'm told. But there's also an office.
Just beyond his qualifications.
Ah, OK.
Is the only topic for today.
Ah, OK. Merci.
Thank you. There will be a location. So the qualifications, I can't ask then about the team. I know that you will have people who will be working with you. Yes. If I am confirmed in this position, it's not presently certain because I am a nominee. But we have begun consultations in order to have a small secretariat, but a strong one. Thank you very much. It's a privilege. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Mr. Reid. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to share my time, my 7 minutes, with Ms. Bussier.
Say welcome to the committee and howdy neighbor. Of course, you and Mrs. Johnson are now residents of Lanark County, and it was wonderful to see you out at the Brett Pearson Run for Your Life in September. I know that that is one of the best community initiatives in the area, and it meant a lot to them to have you there. So thank you for that.
It was a privilege.
I wanted to go back and draw upon your experience as the moderator of several previous leaders' debates in federally in 79 and 84 and also in the province of Ontario, to ask about dealing with the difficult question of which party leader is in and which party leader is out. A decision with which you and the advisory panel are going to have to deal. That is going to be a vexed question. Could you shed some light on how you're going to handle that?
Well, fortunately, the mandate provides criteria that are very helpful, and I thank your committee for the job you've done not only on that question, but a number of questions. And there are 3 criteria that must be met, 2 of which must be met. The first 2 are reasonably clear. The third could present some interpretation issues. But I and the advisory board will follow those criteria carefully and make the decisions appropriately.
Right. One of the things that it seems to me is when you deal with the legitimate chance issue, one has to make a call at some point as to where that stands. Poll numbers go up and down. They're particularly going to be the case if you have a party that contests only in one province, for example. It's a relevant question because the Bloc Québécois is one of those. And the margin of error goes up when you're dealing with a smaller sample. Have you thought about how you're going to deal with the timing issue? At some point, the decision can itself make a significant impact on whether or not that party is going to be able to win seats in the next election. I know you are not seeking to unduly influence the outcome of the election, so how would you handle that?
Well, you put very good questions, and I don't have a specific answer to them, and they will have to be determined at the time with the, of course, advice of the advisory board. The timing is a very sensitive and important question, and there are arguments on either side of when that time should be. Of course, as soon as possible, but if one is looking at political history, if one is looking at polling, if one is looking at the interests of that particular party developing its option, there has to be a time for that to to come to fruition. And then there's an interpretation, polling results being one, history of that particular party and its interest being another, and the third would be what is the legitimate chance for that party to have members in the next parliament. No answer I can give you at the moment other than say we'll consider all the factors and try to come to a timely and sensible decision.
Right. I mean, an example that comes to my mind as being one that would be very, very difficult to have decided had this commission been in existence for that election would be the 1993 election and the case of the National Party under Mel Hertig, which came out of nowhere, appeared to have a real potential, depending on who was looking at it, to win some seats. Seems to me that there would be merit to the idea of having some arbitrarily chosen point in advance so as to make sure that no one can interpret the decision as being discretionary, as being the time at which one makes a decision for inclusion for a party for which, not every party will have this problem, for which the realistic chance of winning seats is one of the two conditions they need to fulfill.
That's a very thoughtful observation. It has the beauty, of course, of precision and clarity. On the other hand, you want to determine how much evidence you need, but you've alluded to earlier precedents. We will look at earlier precedents. I'm a lawyer by training, and I'm not sure I should say I enjoy those questions, but that's what we do for a living, and as Governor General, we try to prepare well for constitutional issues that would arise.
Right, true.
And set up a stream of advice that came independently of the very good advice that we received through the Office of the Prime Minister, the Office of the Clerk of the Privy Council, the Department of Justice. But on legal questions, we used three external people who served pro bono simply to provide that stream of advice. So without making it too complicated, we would certainly take into account and look at some of the precedents you've suggested, and where there has been a decision made in our jurisdiction or others, be guided by those and try to do something that's reasonable.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Look forward to further advice on those matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonjour et merci pour être ici aujourd'hui.
Good day. Thank you for coming today. I must say that, of course, I have a great deal of respect for you, particularly as a woman. And you have really done such a good job. This is something really incredible.
The extent you plan on engaging with political parties to uphold your mandate. It's outlined in the Leaders Debate Commission that part of your mandate would be engaging political parties to negotiate the terms of the debates. This is very vague and allows for a lot of leeway. So I'm wondering, I know that you have had much experience before in regards to negotiating and managing groups with competing interests. Based upon your experience, how do you plan to address this consultation, please?
Well, to consult widely and to be sure that one is consulting with and receiving advice from parties that have an important interest in the process. The advisory board itself will be an important body to provide that kind of input, those kind of thoughts. I will be in contact, of course, with the various political parties to seek their advice on those and other questions, and to try to be sure that what we do is inclusive, but also transparent and open. And when we make a particular decision, that it's clear and we provide appropriate reasons for it. And thank you for the comments on women. My wife and I are the parents of 5 daughters. No sons-in-law, but we have 4
You had 4
boys and 7 girls.
Thank you very much. And I should have mentioned, David, at the beginning, if someone asks you a question not related to your qualifications, you don't have to answer, but I'll let you answer if you want.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Christofferson.
Interesting you gave that instruction just before I spoke. It was noted.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah. Mr. Reid's fault. Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and Excellency. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know if you're aware, there are some of us who have some problems with the process, and we'll be addressing that in due course. And if I may, in my view, we've kind of got this a little bit backwards. We should be having, we've got the cart in front of the horse. We should be having the policy that the government was proposing first, nail that down, get legitimacy and buy-in from at least 2 of the 3 parties. We've moved from unanimity to at least that as the bare minimum, and then proceed to who. However, I'm quite prepared to leap ahead to the extent that if the government decides to try to legitimize this process, and I'm going to offer a suggestion in a moment, as to who, I certainly would be more than not just comfortable, sir, with you being there, but you would do us a great service and a great honor. You are the gold standard of public service, and I can't imagine any position that you wouldn't be eminently qualified to represent Canadians and bring that fairness and values and your integrity and your intelligence and your experience to bear. And I can't emphasize that enough, sir, that any of my comments that are negative are addressed to the process, to the government, to everything except you. I have the highest regard for you, as does my caucus. And if at the end of the day you end up being the debates commissioner, we as a country would be well served. So, but part of our difficulty, sir, is, and I'm mindful of what you said, Chair, so I'm going to do my very best to stay within the confines, recognizing the latitude that members have, especially on PROC. Right from the get-go, sir, my worry, and you know, I'm not smart enough to play hidden politics. I just put it right on the table. My concern is, number one, the whole idea that this was generated, that there needed to be a debates commission, was because one of the major party leaders, who will remain nameless right now, played games and refused to commit to national debates, and meant that we didn't have as fulsome a democratic process that included the kind of debates that Canadians need as we should have. And so the idea was, hey, we got to make sure this doesn't happen again. And it was always kind of a slapdash process, reinvented each time as to who made the call, who made the decision. So it made a great deal of sense that we do this. Unfortunately, sir, the government has mismanaged every aspect of democratic reform to the point where now we're left with them saying that they didn't have enough time to bring this in by way of legislation. Well, sir, I just want you to know that's not our fault. We don't set the legislative agenda. It's the government. And one of the first things that we recommended, I'll tell you what's really annoying me, sir, Chair, is that the government keeps saying, well, we just followed the policies, we just followed the policies of the committee. No, they didn't. One of the key recommendations we made was that there should be unanimity around the choice of the commissioner. Falling back on this old, the government decides who the possibilities are and presents a final candidate and you get a yes or a no, and trying to call that consultation is insulting in this day and age. And yet that's exactly what happened. The day before this policy was announced publicly, the minister met with Nathan Cullen and myself. I won't divulge the actual discussion. That wouldn't be appropriate, but it's fair to say the purpose of the meeting was to brief us on what it was going to be, an edict from on high. And I said that I will say this, because I've said it before publicly, I said to the minister, this should be consultation, not briefing. And she said, well, once you hear who the candidate is, you'll be fine. Well, as I've explained, there's a complete separation between that and the legitimacy of this process. So, first of all, there was supposed to be unanimous agreement on the commissioner. Ignored. There were key aspects of questions of who got to participate in the dates, as my friend, in the debates. As my friend Mr. Reid has pointed out, it was very contentious, and we couldn't come to an agreement, and we didn't try to, because we felt that decision ultimately should be made arm's length from us. Right or wrong, that was our collective interpretation. And Chair, I want to emphasize, we spent a lot of time on this report. And while it may not have had the unanimity of all the parties, there was a great deal of debate and discussion. Even where one of the parties said, I'm offside on this, they would still participate to try to make it better. We had that collegiality. You continue to do an excellent job as the chair of this committee in bringing that out. And we did a lot of hard work. And if anybody wants to say this is some kind of a political hack job or a joke or it didn't matter, speak up now. Because I remember how hard I worked and how hard Mr. Nader worked and how hard you worked. And we put a lot of heart and soul into this. And then the government comes along because of their own mismanagement of their files, didn't have enough time to do it properly, and expects that somehow the debate process in Canada is decided by one party. Because that's effectively what's in front of us. And let me say this, because my time's going to run out soon. Let me say this. All the government is doing is playing into the hands of the very party that doesn't want this debate commission by not having legitimacy to the process. So the lack of thought and political thought and process into this is just mind-boggling, given the government's been in office for a number of years now. My last thing is this, Chair. I would strongly recommend to get this fixed, because I don't need a headline or a quote or a clip because I'm not running again. What I want is to fix our debates and to make our democracy as strong as possible. So, I'm going to throw a lifeline to the government. I'm going to ask them, through you, Chair, to please submit their proposal to PROC, allow amendments, and see if we can find the legitimacy that at least a majority vote representing 2 of the 3 recognized parties could emerge from this committee. That, Chair, would have some legitimacy. And it won't be the document that we passed, and it won't be what the government had, but it would be our collective best interest in trying to make that happen. To me, that's one way to salvage what is just an abysmal embarrassment, as well as an insult to Parliament, that the Liberal government believes that they alone unilaterally can declare by decree how the debate process is going to work, how the rules are going to be set, and who does it. So I end with, sir, sorry I had to do that in front of you, but if you can appreciate, and I saw you sit back, and you've been around a long time, you know how this works, but I want to end, sir, by saying again the respect that I have for you, and that if you end up being our commissioner, I would be thrilled. In fact, if you end up in any role representing Canada and helping our democracy, we are better off for it. Thank you for being here today, sir, and thank you for the floor, Chair.
Well, let me say, Mr. Chair, thank you for those very touching personal comments. They do touch the heart, and I'm very grateful. When I repeat some of them to my wife tonight, she'll have a different opinion, but that's okay. That's 54 years of marriage. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure all the committee members agree the respect we all have for you, David. We'll now go to Mr. Sims.
Very quickly, Your Excellency, it's nice to see you again. I've followed you over these many years, and I want to wish you the best of luck in this position, and I know you'll do a hell of a fine job. And for the rest of it, Ms. May.
Could I just respond to say, Scott, we have a custom that we fine people $10 anytime they use the old titles. And it's double for each subsequent offense, so continue to offend, please, because all that money goes to the Rito Hall Foundation.
Duly noted. I'll even add on to it for interest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to my colleague, Scott Sims. Mr. Chair, how much time will I have for intervention at this point?
You have 6.5 minutes.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Well, I'm going to take a page out of David Christopherson's book, because I love him. He may not love what I have to say, but I'm going to quickly set out that I'm enormously grateful that the government has taken the bull by the horns and set a debates commission process with firm criteria in advance, because I think we're debating this. There's no question that it would be much better if all parties, and I take out the words all recognized parties, because the recognized parties have frankly been manipulating the debates process for years to exclude anyone but the recognized parties. No intention towards you, darling, but honestly, this has been, the debates process is one that, viewed by any impartial observer, brings democracy into disrepute. You've got collusion, backroom dealings. The media consortium has worked so hard, but not only did they have Mr. Harper threatening not to participate in debates, in the last time around, both Mr. Mulcair and Mr. Harper got the English language leaders debate cancelled. So 11 million Canadians who had watched the simultaneous English language leaders debate in 2011 were deprived of that opportunity in 2015, and also the women's debate. And then we had this scattering of other debates, which I believe were put in place specifically to draw attention away from the fact that we just lost the nationally broadcast English language leaders debate. So the problem is we're looking at this process and saying it's flawed, and I won't say it's perfect, but it's, in comparison to status quo, it's a huge improvement. And I'll give you two reasons why. And for supporting documentation, one could look up the article that Tony Berman wrote. He'd been chair of the consortium with CBC during the 2008 leaders debate and wrote about how fraught it was, how anti-democratic, how absurd it was to have all this behind closed doors with the threats from different leaders. But also, Andrew Coyne has written very brilliantly on the problem of, Andrew Coyne's analogy is, it's like Chrysler, GM, and Ford get together with the TV networks and say, okay, we all agree, no TV ads for Toyota. That's how unfair, indiscriminate, and anti-democratic it's been till now. And I do sense that there's a lot of effort being made from the very same people who never wanted to see it broadened beyond the large parties to discredit this effort. So I wanted to be very, very upfront in saying I welcome this effort. And one of the key benefits is that when the media consortium had the fairly thankless task, and I don't blame the media consortium for any of this, but the problem is when the media news directors are making a key decision for democracy, their own reporters have a very difficult time reporting on what's going on. In fact, they can't. So my hope is that with an independent debates commission, with a qualified debates commissioner, with transparency, the news media won't be shut out from reporting on what's going on. Because as far as I recall, there was never a news story in the 2015 election. Isn't it interesting? Two federal party leaders, one of them the standing prime minister, have managed to get the debates canceled. So let me say that I welcome predictable, transparent process on which the media can be informed to report on what's happening. I see the biggest risk here, before I move to your qualifications, sir, in being a lack of sufficient buy-in from the larger parties and a lack of sufficient buy-in from the consortium members. So my advice, humbly, respectfully submitted, is you've got 7 positions for an advisory board. Fill it with CTV, CBC, Global, TVA, Radio-Canada. They ran the debates from the 1960s till now. And I would add TVO and CPAC. And let those be your advisors, because as soon as possible, we need their commitment that they will broadcast. There's no commitment now to broadcast the debates that the Debate Commission produces, and that needs to be very clear early on. So I welcome this. I say hallelujah to the criteria, because they work for the Bloc Québécois. They work in fairness for parties like mine, and I think they'll probably end up working for Max Bernier and People's Party, but we shall see. But I would ask you this one question, if you'd like to reflect on it. In your long and illustrious career, you haven't mentioned one particular role you had, which I think has application to this, in that you were the founding chair of the National Roundtable on Environment and Economy from 1988 to 1990, with lots of disparate groups and multi-stakeholder engagement. So I wonder if you've thought that that had any application to the new role that I hope you will be assuming. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I love that role. It was a roundtable that brought stakeholders from different interests together, and guess what? We actually reached some, for us, important conclusions. And the inclusiveness was a very big part of that. That roundtable lasted for about 20 years, which is very unusual. These things usually are for a particular term of a particular government and they disappear. And I was delighted and I must say surprised that it had that durability. And there then were offshoots of the roundtable process for sustainable development, which became very much part of our culture during that process, but the roundtable process for other interesting activities and important questions before our body politic. And sure, the notion of having a broad range of ideas to come up with important solutions will be, I think, a guiding factor. And I love the notion of the round table because you see everyone. You can look them in the eye and they read the body language. And that's very Canadian. And I live by the maxim that mines like parachutes work best when open, and you need all of the vehicles possible to keep them open. Thank you also for your advice on some of the very specific questions that we'll have to address.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, 10 seconds.
Oh, love to Sharon. You guys rock. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we go on to Mr. Nader, as we agreed, we'll go to 5 minutes before the vote, which would give us 55 minutes altogether, but the Liberals have also agreed to give up a slot, so the opposition will get as much time as they would have in a full hour. So we'll go on to Mr. Nader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate those comments. Again, thank you, sir, for joining us. I would say in my riding of Perth-Wellington with the City of Stratford, we appreciate your efforts while you were president of the University of Waterloo to establish the Stratford campus in our community. It's well appreciated and reflects a lot of your background in terms of digital and technology, and leads me to my first question. Given your academic background, I would note that on your coat of arms you have a binary code, which I think is appropriate given your background, and leads me to my question. I have to disagree a little bit with Ms. May in terms of having the major broadcasters form the advisory panel. From my perspective as a millennial, I don't have cable at home. I don't have satellite. I don't rely on television as a source of news. More than half of my generation rely on digital communications, on online platforms. So I'd be curious, given your extensive academic background, how would you go about ensuring that my generation and those younger than me, I almost feel old compared to new voters now at age 34, new voters at age 18. Mr. Christopherson gets used to it. But how would you go about establishing and using your background to ensure that our generation and those younger than me have the opportunity to engage in the debates?
To reach out. My grandmother used to say you have 2 ears and 2 eyes and only 1 mouth for a reason. Listen and watch, and then maybe speak. 2, I say, sometimes people think it's trite, but it's very meaningful to me. All the important things in life I've learned from my children and now from my grandchildren. And it's not that they provide all the content of what you know or what you're relearning, but they view life from a different angle. And for me, that's been a very important sort of mindset. And I write about this kind of thing. You mentioned the coat of arms that has pluses and minuses at the bottom. That was to indicate my interest in technology and learning, but there was some fun with the media when that was released. They thought it was a secret Da Vinci Code message, and we just leave that as an open question. Maybe people will try to find the hidden message there. The first book I wrote as a young lawyer was Computers and the Law, because this was 1967, that's a long time ago, because I was very interested in how technology, which is a rapidly changing and advancing force, was impacting on very traditional norms and conventions, the law, which tend to look backward, and how we deal with that tension. And I continue to write books in that area, communication law, cyber law, and so on. And what has happened in my professional lifetime, thinking about this and trying to listen a lot and write a little bit, is the acceleration has been geometrical. It's that kind of curve, and the capacity of the human intelligence to adapt to it and adjust to it is like that, and we're dealing with this huge gap. So what do? Well, you don't give up your hands in disgust, but you're trying to learn and listen in new ways, and to be sure that as you find your moorings, find your way, that you are not shutting yourself off from new ideas, especially those that aren't in your head because you're a generation or two older.
I was actually hoping you might have told us what the binary code actually means, if there is a Da Vinci Code, and maybe someday you'll have to write your memoirs and spill the beans on that one. But
I think there are probably 3 or 4 novels that one could spin out of that.
Appreciate that. Okay. Drawing your experience from moderating past debates in 1979, 1984, and the provincial debates, curious of how you use that experience when it comes about to establish some more of the mechanics and logistics, some of the staffing side of things, for the moderator, for example. Certainly the role of the moderator is probably one of the most difficult, as you would know. So drawing on your experience, how would you go about establishing that type of position or other positions similar to that?
I'd say 3 or 4 things. One is things have changed a lot since 79 and 84 and 87 when I was last actively involved. 2, will be very interested in the request for proposals process to see how broad, imaginative, inclusive, wise they are in meeting what you and I would regard as high standards of journalistic integrity, but interest and in breadth and coverage. We'll try through the advisory board and then through reaching out to other people who've thought about this a lot to get their views and try to be sure they're reflected and realize that whatever decisions are made in the general terms of the format, the themes, the degree of participation, that'll be for that particular instant. And you probably know that when you do it the next time, you'll do it somewhat differently. And in the report that we will file with you within 5 months of the conclusion of the October debates, I hope we'll cover some of those possibilities of what we've discovered and what we know that we don't know and are yet remain to be discovered.
Merci. Maintenant, Ms. Sahota for 5 minutes.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here today, and as you were referenced in your speech at the beginning, a little bit of the experience that you've had moderating the federal and Ontario provincial debates. I was wondering if you could delve into that a little bit more and what experience you gained through that process. What were the difficulties and challenges that you foresaw in those debates, and how you think debates have evolved since that time, and what you think those challenges may be going forward?
Well, one very specific one was as a moderator and I used to do a lot of labor arbitration and conciliation, so that I served as a commissioner of the Ontario Securities Commission. You're always trying to be extremely balanced, measured, and follow a fairly clear set of rules and no deviation. Of course, what the broadcasters wanted was a free-for-all. If they could get a shouting match and a real tango, that would be great. So that was a very interesting tension. And in fact, I had on my desk, it was a video screen where you were getting instructions from the people that were managing the debate in the rooms beyond, and you had to ignore them because their interests were, they would say, as lively as possible, and I would say as disorderly as possible. So that's a very interesting tension. And you see various formats where I find it unattractive when people are shouting across one another, and would try to avoid that. Other people would find that interesting. That's a very specific comment. What you do, I think, is you have to adjust with the times. You have to realize that we use media in a much different way than we did back in 1979 and 1984. But you take advice from a range of people on what makes for a really informative debate, one that engages the public interest, one that permits the parties' policies to emerge with a degree of clarity, and one can make judgments about the leadership characteristics of the different people who are appearing in those debates, and try to get as far as you can into that, and I think as far away from very superficial emotional reactions that occur from place to place. And I think worry an awful lot about what happens with the debates. Do they mean anything to Canadians? How do we get at truth at a time when, what are verifiable facts and what are ideological ideas get bandied about a little bit? And study very carefully how you use the debates as just one part of a large process of, one, informing the public broadly, but secondly, engaging the public broadly, and thirdly, I would say, engaging the young. I spent my whole life in universities. I think I did because I find young people so interesting, and I think that's a great challenge for us as Canadians. How do we engage young people in saying, this is important and I want to participate in it? Those are rambling comments.
No, I think that was quite insightful, and I look forward to seeing if, appointed, what you do with the role. I know my colleague, Mr. Sims, gave up his time graciously to Ms. May, so I want to allow him to ask any questions he may have.
Thank you. Just very quickly, sir, we've talked a lot about the...
It's only $5, the sir.
Sorry, what's that?
It's only $5 for sir. It's 10 or more for the excellency.
I'm well aware. I've got your money right here, sir. You're good for charity, I'll tell you that.
It's a Scottish
just quickly, we talked a lot about the platforms we use, the different demographics that we want to reach out to, but this does go to your qualifications. Some time ago, we talked about communicating with the North from a language perspective and all their, well, for not just all Indigenous and different types of languages they speak. In your experiences in the past, traveling throughout the North, in your mind, do you have a good idea how we can engage more people in Canada's North or Indigenous communities about being involved in debates? Or
well, we have to work at it, and we have to realize we're a country from coast to coast to coast. Number two, I was so struck in the first year of your time in office, you visit the 13 different capitals of the country. We're in Yellowknife, and in the Legislative Assembly there, they have 12 official languages. Mm-hmm. People say 12 official languages. How on earth can you make a country like that work? It does work. It's Canada. It works very much. Thirdly, one of the Governor General Innovation Awards last year, we've had that program now for, this will be the fourth year, was a marvelous professor at the University of Montreal who's developed a software to take some of the less known Indigenous languages, particularly in the North because of very small people, and by recording them and then using very sophisticated software to be able to develop the vocabulary, the grammar, and actually put it into teachable form. It's fascinating that innovation has occurred. And finally, you know, this is a very personal thing, but how we reach the North, Rita Hall Foundation, which I chair, and which we set up in 2012 to be able to amplify the outreach of the Office of Governor General, administers the Arctic Inspiration Prize. That's $60 million by two immigrants to Canada who've left their life savings to produce $3.5 million a year to promote projects in the North by the Northerners for Northerners. We've had 4 years of it now, and it's one $1 million prize, two $500,000 prizes, and then typically 7 or 8 $100,000 or less prizes, usually led by young people that are still in the early stages. Each year, at least one of those would have to do with languages, maybe two, and culture, and those are important things in developing a much greater sense of the richness of the languages in our North and preserving and making them use.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Kusi for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Scott, thank you very much for clarifying that it is still retained after they leave the office, the excellency. I wasn't sure, so I appreciate that. So I would like to talk to you a little bit, please, Mr. Johnson, in regards to the recruitment process. I would be interested to know who contacted you in regards to the position, if you were informed that there was a short list, and who else might have been on that short list, and how the mandate was presented to you in terms of the amount of latitude that you would have to carry out the mandate, please.
Yeah, 3 questions there. One, I had a telephone conversation with the Prime Minister's office and then had 2 conversations with Minister Gould, point 1. Point 2, somewhere in that process I saw the draft mandate as written, and it looked to me to be clear, and I was very appreciative of that, and also very appreciative of the report of your committee, which I thought was a first-class piece of work, plus the testimonies behind that. And then the sondage, or the consultation effort that was done by the Institute for Research in Public Policy. I've been involved in a number of public inquiries and commissions, 25 or so over, 40, 50 years. And what was particularly interesting and attractive to me is how far down the road you had gone to refine the questions and prepare a mandate. And as my friend David Christopherson indicates, of course, there's controversy about that. But if you look at that particular controversy, it's very comforting to be considered for this position, and it's if. I'm not named, I'm simply a nominee at this stage. To know that you have a fairly refined set of activities, and you know what you have to do, and then you also know what it is you have to make some judgments on and how you go about that. And for lawyers who are always looking for a degree of certainty, that's very comforting. With respect to the third question, which had to do with was I aware of other folks? No, no discussion of that. I was asked, would I do it? And my answer was, look, I've spent my whole life in public life, and I've always said yes to those questions, save for I don't have the skill set or don't have the time. And on a few occasions in my past, I've said I really don't have the skill set, and there's often been an argument about that. Or I don't have a time. I'm a general manager of a university, which is a full-time job, and how much time can you carve out? And if you can carve it out and do it, but if you say you can't do the job properly, then you don't. So that was my response, and I don't know what other things were considered. Sorry for the length of that.
No, not at all. I think the length is required. Thank you. Because certainly, while I believe everyone around the table has no doubt that you are an incredible candidate, Canadians certainly have a right to know the process that brought you here today. So I appreciate the clarification on that, Your Excellency. And as well, I just wanted to point out, and I know certainly you're no stranger to this, I think it's very interesting that so many around the table point to our previous leader as having had their own interests served within the debate process, when clearly they're here today advocating for their own interests. So I would just like to raise that point. My final question would be in regards to the budget. It has been noted that there is $5.5 million put aside for this. Certainly you have had the opportunity in several of your roles managing these budgets of this magnitude, I should say. So how do you envision budgeting the $5.5 million that has been allotted for this position, and what direction have you been given? What have you been mandated to do with the $5.5 million? Thank you.
Well, one goes to the mandate in terms of the scope of work, so to speak, and of course the very specific matter is to have 2 national debates in the 2 official languages. Then beyond that, to encourage other debates of other kinds. Beyond that, there's an educational element to it, which we hope we'll address in a very thoughtful way. There's a broad consultation mandate or interest to it. There is a coming to understand how these instruments and our democratic process work in our country and work in others, and try to provide the best advice on that, and then finish it with a report that I hope will be thoughtfully prepared and will involve, again, wide consultation to do the job properly. What that will cost, I'm not sure. I can assure you I'm Scottish by heritage, and we will be prudent and reasonable and try to justify wisely those costs. We've begun the work of setting up a secretariat and looking at costs of that sort. We don't have that fully itemized yet, and won't, I think, until we have that advisory board, so we take their counsel on it as well.
So you were not provided with an itemized budget. My colleague, Mr. Cullen from the NDP, said, podiums cost this much, glasses of water cost this much. Mm-hmm. You can confirm that you haven't been provided with an itemized budget.
Have not, and the word independent in the mandate, I think, is an important one. I think respected by the government, and one that I think will be comforting to myself and my colleagues. That said, the first place we'll go will be to Treasury Board guidelines for various expenditures and be prudent and reasonable.
Thank you. I wanted to return again to selecting the established 7-member advisory board to yourself. What processes were you considering to select these individuals? Again, I know in the many roles you've had opportunities where you've had to select both staff as well as advisors. What will you consider as you go to determine these 7 individuals, really, which will have the significant role of advising you in terms of determining both the terms, the procedures, the contents of these debates?
Yeah, well, first of all, go to the mandate in terms of how that advisory board is described, and in fact there are criteria there that indicate the kind of experience one is looking for. And then secondly, to consult thoughtfully and widely, beginning with this committee, your views on more particular qualities beyond what is set out in the mandate would be most welcome. We would want to get at it expeditiously. There's some discussion that it will be done by spring. I would like to have it done before then. Spring is April, and October comes quickly, and one wants to get on with not only the specific debates but all of the educational processes. To consult beyond that, beginning with some of the 30-plus stakeholders that appeared before your committee and gave very thoughtful advice. So that would be the process we take. Obviously, you can't spend 6 months consulting. You have to get on with the job and with the time frame, but within a smaller time frame to be sure that you are getting a range of views and then make a decision.
Thank you very much.
Merci. J'ai rien mais respect pour vous et merci.
Thank you. I have nothing but respect for you, and I want to thank you for coming.
Merci
Mr. Chair, can I
infiniment.
just have a quick point of order here?
Yeah.
I think Mr. Johnson here Dr. Johnson just said earlier quite convincingly that every time we mention his former title, we owe his charity $10. I think both Ms. Kuzi and I are up for $10 each, and I said with interest, so that's another $5. So
Thank you.
Very good point of order. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank the committee for their thoughtful questions and debate. And Mr. Johnson, as you can see, you have great respect from all the members here. You're a great man and a great Canadian. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.